They told us to give a disclaimer. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the podcasters, any guests, and do not reflect any of the management, owners, sponsorships, or employees of thereof. Pretty much, if you're soft, don't listen to this podcast.
One thing I pride myself on is just being the same and trying to look out for my folks along the way.
Like, even with all these, big things happening, like, you still mad humble, and you still, like, you have enough clout now where you could easily be like, I'm not fucking with this, I'm not fucking with that.
Oh yeah, motherfuckers, it's on. Unrestricted podcast listeners, thank you so much for clicking play. Because of you, those numbers are going up, up, and up. And as you know, the Patreon is alive and well. You can help support this channel, help support this show by going on patreon.com/Drerawka. Literally $3, $5, whatever you could do would really help keep the lights on in the studio. But if you don't have it, I get it. It's hard out here. But if you want to help support the free route, just go ahead, like, share, comment, subscribe, tell somebody about this show, because we have great guests that come onto the show, like Amber Washington, who just dropped like it's an album.
It kind of feels like that.
Yeah, you really, I mean, this literally is it. But you just released your first memoir, Whole, My Journey to W.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to get it. I know you brought a copy. I'm waiting for mine in the mail. You can get it right now on Amazon.com. And you can also order straight through Amber here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, welcome to the show, Amber.
Thanks, Trey.
Oh, I don't know why I hit the the little joke thing. Fat fingers. Amber, I'm excited to hear about your story. I'm excited to hear more about Whole. But I want to start with, are you originally from Utah?
I am, yeah. Born and raised.
Get up on that mic. Get right
Born and raised in Orem.
In Orem, Utah.
I grew up in the bubble.
And is that Utah County?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Have you always lived there your whole life?
Mostly. I've tried to escape Utah twice, and I just keep finding myself back here. So, yeah, majority of my life has been here and even in Utah County.
Utah does have a magnet. I noticed that because my dad moved us away from Utah in the early 90s, and I ended up back here in 2005.
Yeah.
And for me, I love Utah. There's some things I don't like about it, but I feel like that's going to be wherever you go. I don't.
Yeah, definitely.
You move to Paradise Island, I'm sure you're going to find something you don't like, whether if it's a tropical storm or something.
Something.
There's going to be something there. So I always say make the best of what you got. And you're making the best with a book, a memoir. So why is now the time for this memoir? Out of all the life you've been living, all the life that you've lived, why in 2025 is now the time for Whole?
That's an awesome question. And I think that even just talking about Utah, really, that's it. I ended up moving to Texas back in 2021. I was married and thought that when we left Utah, I was never going to come back. And leaving Utah was a pivotal part of my healing journey. I spent so many years trying to heal in the environment that hurt me, and just felt like I was on this hamster wheel. I just couldn't get off. So getting out of Utah allowed me the space that I needed to really begin healing. And so I started actually writing this book while I lived in Texas. And then ended up getting divorced and having, my marriage and my life kind of go boom. And when that happened, I have 3 boys from my first marriage, and we were all in Texas together. And I knew that they needed to be back here. And I was honestly almost as angry about having to come back to Utah as I was about my marriage ending. And so for the first 6 months of being back here, I was angry. And I had started looking for a therapist for my boys and found my current therapist that started as a therapist for my kids. And one of the very first things that he said to me, probably 3-4 sessions in, is you need to get out into your community, and here I was venting about, I hate Utah. I don't like the culture here. I can't be here. It's not good for me. And so when he said that, I was like, screw you.
Yeah.
No, just validate me, hear me, and just be like, oh yeah, I can understand why you don't like it here. That's what I wanted to hear. But what I'm so grateful for is that he's never been somebody that tells me the things that I want to hear. He pushes me. And he did. He continued to push me. And actually invited me to an event that he was hosting. And that event, getting out into my community, started this snowball effect and turned into a social life that I never saw coming. And so why now? Because I was able to do so much of the work that I needed to do. Back in 2022, I had written the majority of my story, right? Up from 6, 7 years old when my story starts all the way through, 40 plus years old. And at that time, I felt like I had an ending to my book. But in retrospect, so much of that ending and so much of the W, I was contributing to my ex-husband. And so with that piece no longer there, I really had to sit with what my life looked like and what the journey looked like. And so through just getting out into my community and doing therapy, also I had attended a retreat with Sapria. And Sapria is a nonprofit located here in Utah. Oddly enough, I found them while I was in Texas. They do a lot of work around education, prevention, and healing from childhood sexual abuse. And so one of the things that they offer is a free retreat. And this is huge because the cost of healing is monumental. I was able to attend one of their retreats actually in Georgia, which is a location that's no longer available. They just have it here in Utah. But at the end of 2022, when it was shortly after, I think 2 weeks after I returned from that retreat, that I found out my ex-husband was cheating, and so I had turned this corner. And I remember, I write about this in the book, but I remember standing in my kitchen and just becoming really, emotional and overwhelmed and just being like, oh my God, you did it. Like I could see the light at the end of this tunnel that I just didn't know if I was ever going to see. And so then for 2 weeks later to have my life go boom, it's one of those, again, in hindsight, things that I can look back at and think everything happens for a reason. And I know that that's so cliche, and sometimes I hate that saying, but I really genuinely feel like I can find a lot of gratitude, for my marriage ending and even what my marriage was. But yeah, I ended up back in Utah, and I ended up out in a community that I didn't know existed in Utah. And so it wasn't any longer about healing in the environment that hurt me, but it was healing and creating a new environment in my community that I was able to heal with and through.
That kind of goes to the title, right? Like your title is, I joked about it earlier about you dropping an album, but your wordplay on the title is really, really cool.
Thank you.
Going from whole with an H to whole with a W.
Yeah.
Why was that? Why did you land on this title?
Ooh, I love that question. In 2013, I was at the lowest point of my life. I had just been arrested. I had my boys temporarily taken away from me. I have 3 boys. And I was living back at home. And what I didn't know then and what I know now is that I was in crisis during this time of my life. I had just ended my first marriage. I was exhibiting very self-destructive trauma response and behaviors that I didn't understand, and I hated who I was. But I remember I have a thinking spot at my parents' house that's been my thinking spot forever, and it's their front porch. I remember I was out sitting on the front porch, and that's what I was thinking about. It's just like how do I didn't even have my kids, and so how do I get out? And so I'm just picturing myself in this hole. And the only thing down in that hole with me is the shovel that I had used to dig it. And as I'm looking up, there's not a ladder. There's not a hand reaching down. There was nothing. And in that moment, I saw the word HOLE, and the W just kind of came to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, when you take that W and you add it in front of the HOLE, it takes something that is void, desolate, empty, and it completes it. You know, and this is a book that I wanted to write since I was 15 years old. And I just was like, oh my gosh, there's my title. That's my title, you know? And having the title for the book gave me hope and it gave me meaning. And I didn't know how in that moment I was gonna ever get out, but I knew that I was going to. And the only thing, again, that I had, the only resource was that shovel. And I just started picturing myself, you know, digging into the side and putting dirt on the other side to be able to make my way up. And I knew that it was going to be a very slow process, but I'm a fighter. And that's something that I'm so grateful for, is I have this resilience and this stubbornness that I was born with that I've just never been able to say quit. And that's where the title of the book came from.
You say that you're resilient, no have no quit. Did you always know that? Or when did you really learn that you were resilient?
Yeah, I think from a young age. So I talk about this in the book, and my mom recognizing from a very young age that my stubbornness might be something that I needed. And so from age 2, maybe 3, she started to work to not necessarily punish me for my stubbornness, but to nurture it instead. And resilience is interesting because I think it's something that's been there with me my whole life, but it has looked different at different phases throughout my life. And there's been times where I've taken, in fact, most of my life, and I think especially as a teenager, where I took the approach of, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. My trauma didn't affect me. You know, I'm stronger than that. And I viewed that as resilience. And I needed that probably at that time of my life. But what I didn't know was how damaging that mindset actually was. And now I take a very different approach, because victim is a word that has a very negative connotation to it. Nobody wants to be a victim. And people will use the term, sitting in their victimhood or staying a victim. And yes, that does absolutely happen. But for me, I finally got to a place where I was like, I can't be a survivor if I was never allowed to be a victim in the first place. And I wasn't. I disclosed as a child, which is very, very rare. What else is rare is that my grandfather, who was abusing me, admitted it, and yet never sat a day in jail. We went to court, and I talk a lot about that in the book. But his punishment was not a punishment. I've been to jail twice. You know, I spent more time in jail, and I really have carried the consequences of his decision and his behavior. And the way that it was handled after the fact is really where the bulk of the trauma and the damage was done, because it wasn't a matter of whether or not I was believed. He admitted to it. But we continued to see him. We continued to see him.
Wow.
And
can we pause right there?
Yeah, absolutely.
You tell, and I'm assuming, are your parents in the household with you, or are your parents still
Both.
together during this
They
time?
are. Mm-hmm.
You tell your parents, hey, something ain't right with Grandpa, this is wrong. At what point do your parents confront Grandpa, and Grandpa says yeah?
Yeah, they do. So, and I don't want to spoil everything, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but absolutely. And it was right before my 9th birthday, so I'm still very young, but right before my 9th birthday. And
it started when you were 6, though?
6, 7, that's something that's very difficult. In fact, putting together the time frame for this book, I had to go pull court records from 1989 to 1990, journal entries from various people, and there's not very much of that in my own journals, in my mom's journals. We didn't write about it, and I think that speaks to what happened, and that was that, okay, this thing happened to you and it stopped, so you're okay. And the way that my parents handled it was to send me to therapy. Me, not the family, not anybody else. It was me. And I was very resistant to that. From a very young age, I felt broken. And also I felt like I had destroyed our family. You know, my grandparents ended up getting a divorce, understandably so.
Because of the situation?
Uh-huh.
So
yeah.
grandma was like, yo, you're a creep?
Well,
or
yes.
was grandma part of the problem?
Grandma was part of the problem in the sense of she suspected and I'm the one that stopped it. And that's something that I've struggled with too. You know, it really, like, the intrafamilial sexual abuse is so complex because it's not just the sexual abuse. Children actually have a very good chance of healing, recovering, being very, you know, happy, healthy people when given the correct resources and the correct love, support to be able to do that. When a child doesn't have that, and that this is what I didn't know, right? I didn't understand any of this. I knew that things were wrong. And I started questioning my parents from a very young age. In fact, I remember asking my mom, why? My dad wouldn't talk about it. Still, my dad won't talk about it. But my mom, I said, Mom, like, why would we continue to see Walt? I don't even like to call him my grandpa. Why would we continue to see him? And she told me that you know, back then in the early 90s, that's what therapists told her, that the best thing for us and the family, myself included, obviously, is to keep us all together.
Whoa.
And yeah.
Was this therapist or was this Utah County therapist? Because it just sounds like your the surroundings, from what I know back in the day, was very much, I don't know how to say it without sounding crazy.
No, I know exactly where you're going.
But Utah County had a stigma.
Yeah. That bubble,
right? And so I'm thinking outside that bubble, a therapist probably would have been like, nah, like this ain't right.
Hell no. Yeah.
What the hell? What are we doing? Yeah. This is nasty. This is crazy.
Yeah.
That dude's a dirtbag.
Mm-hmm.
But to say, nah, hey, you know what? She's going to be all right. Keep the family together. It just sounds really off. And it sounds like it might be specific to the area of the bubble that
the
you
culture.
In. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it. I just asked my mom this question maybe 2 months ago. Writing is very therapeutic. But beyond writing has been reading. So me reading back my own story, and it starts to unlock these different pieces. And as you'll read in the book, my mom and I have a really good relationship. But my mom has given me space and grace to ask and say really, really hard things, which is brave in and of its own right. But this question was really, really hard for me to ask because my mom is still a member of the church. And I've just, no matter how I feel, and I have very strong feelings and opinions, I've really tried to be respectful of that. I got to a place while I was writing in 2022 where I was really angry. And I was questioning, how do I have relationships with anybody who is part of this organization? And the place that I got to with that was really my mom and a really sweet girlfriend of mine that is still a member as well. And I just thought of these two women, and I just thought, this is something that brings them peace. And who am I to take that away from them, you know? So because of that, and thanks to that, I was able to you know, say, okay, I'm going to put that to the side. I don't need to hate anybody. But still having any conversation that could even make somebody question, and especially my mom, I've just tiptoed around it. I've tried to be respectful. I've tried to be careful. But as I've been, you know, writing and doing all of this, my mom's been super supportive. And so So I did. I asked her that question not too long ago, and I just said, Mom, you know, you've told me that it was therapists. Was it also church leaders? And she said no, but then the answer that she gave to me was yes, you know, and there's a huge theme in this book, especially when it comes to the church, around forgiveness. And it was crazy, the answer that she gave, because this has already been written. And, you know, she said that she went to our bishop at the time and really was looking for comfort, you know, and direction. And that as she was telling this man who cared about our family what had happened, she said that he started to get emotional. But that he said, you know, Suzanne, you're not going to like the answer that I give you, but this is the answer. And then he quoted a scripture. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but, you know, that I, the Lord, will forgive who I shall forgive, but as of you, it's commanded to forgive all. And so what she was told in that moment was forgiveness. And the way that I felt growing up was the same way, in that forgiveness was automatic. It was immediate. It didn't matter what was done, and it didn't require an apology from whoever had harmed you. It was up to us to just forgive people. And so that actually is what led me away from the church at a very young age. I started to question, because I would be in Sunday school and I would have teachers say, you know, forgive. And to me, it was forgive or you're going to hell. That's how I heard it.
Yeah. You're a child too.
Yeah. Yes. I'm a child. I'm a young teenage, you know, I'm young. And that's all that I'm hearing is that I'm going to hell. And I couldn't wrap my head around that. Like, because there wasn't. He never apologized to me. This man only lived less than 10 years. You know, if he had to face me today, it would be totally different. But this lucky son of a bitch got to die before I could stand up for myself, because I didn't have anybody that was standing up for me. My mom, after that conversation, went out to the parking lot and bawled her eyes out, and then got herself together and said, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so that's how I will lead. And my mom actually wrote the foreword to my book. So she talks about just taking the approach of hoping that I was going to be okay. So yeah, it's all of this. There was so much that I probably knew, highly suspected, wasn't okay with. But even trying to have these conversations, especially as I was young, I was shut down. And I mentioned, you know, anytime that I would try to talk to my dad, it was my dad's dad that abused me. I was punished. I was either given the silent treatment, I was yelled at. I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And so,
even after his own father said, yeah, like, she's telling the truth.
Yeah.
That's heavy. Is it, you talk about forgiveness, right? And as you were saying that, I was thinking, is it even possible to forgive if you haven't healed? Is that possible to forgive somebody without healing?
I don't really think so. And I take a very different approach to the word forgiveness these days, because there's so much out there that says, you know, forgive. That is the path to healing, is just forgive, unburden yourself. And while I don't disagree with that, what I do disagree with is that forgiveness of other people is required. No, the only person that I owe forgiveness to is myself. And that really is where healing started for me. In 2022, when I started writing this book, I did a ton of research. And I read different memoirs by different people, but the most pivotal book that I have read to date, and I don't know that anything will make a bigger impact on me, but is The Body Keeps the Score. And The Body Keeps the Score really talks about PTSD, and how PTSD for the longest time was associated with veterans, with war. But the doctor that wrote the book, Dr. Vander Kolk, I need to make sure I'm always saying that right, but he started doing research and just realizing that sexual assault victims were exhibiting PTSD symptoms as well too. So the book is amazing because it really talks about the science behind childhood sexual abuse, and that it actually rewires your brain. And when I read that and I started to understand like how deeply trauma imprints on us, I was like, oh, so I can actually give my choices to my trauma. Now, that doesn't excuse me from the consequences of, it doesn't matter where things come from. Anything that we do, it's our consequence, right? But I had taken this stance I mentioned earlier of, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor, and my trauma didn't affect me. And so when I started to rebel, when I was making, bad decisions, I just owned the bad girl narrative. Nope, this isn't my trauma. I'm just a bad person. And that's also how I was treated, especially by my dad. And so it was a way of me protecting myself. And so, one of the things that was really important to me in writing this story is that I wasn't just talking about the abuse that happened, and I wasn't just talking about the pretty things that have happened since, right, where I have landed. But I talk about the choices that I made, the things that I have done. I mentioned I've been to jail twice. I talk about both of those things in the book. I was pretty promiscuous as a teenager. I have not been the best mom at different times in my boy's life, and there's nothing that I will ever regret more than that. But I wanted to take ownership of my story, and I wanted to show other survivors that these are trauma responses and behaviors. When really bad shit happens to you, it does impact us, whether we want it to or not, whether we feel like we're strong enough or not. It is going to cause different behaviors to happen. And I hated who I was. And if we hate who we are, we're going to treat ourselves like we hate who we are. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it was really important to me that I talked about all of that. And I apologize, you're going to have to redirect me back to what the question was.
Well, as you're talking, I wrote down a question for myself. You mentioned that your mom was early on getting you to a therapist. Mm-hmm. In my community, therapy wasn't a thing in the 90s. Yeah. Therapy didn't really become acceptable in my community until literally the 2000s, late 2000s.
Wild.
And it made me think, did you started in the 90s. Did you always go to therapy throughout your marriage and everything like that?
No, you're asking beautiful questions. No, I hated therapy because I felt like it was something that was being forced on me as a child and as a teenager. And I remember being grounded if I didn't go, or my mom would sometimes take me to Dairy Queen after the fact, as a reward for going. But I had to have cycled through 8 to 10 different therapists in my youth. So from age 9, probably to 15, 16. And then I did not have a therapist, seek therapy until 2013. And the only reason that I did then was because I was date raped. And that was a service that was offered to me through the Rape Recovery Center. And even that, when it first happened, I was like, no. But I was actually arrested within a week of that event happening when I got into a confrontation with my boy's dad. And as I'm sitting in the back of a cop car, realizing that I'm going to jail for pushing somebody, the man that raped me is not. And that was that was the same time frame of coming up with the title of the book, lowest point in my life. And part of that was like, I knew I needed help. I had no money. And so the Rape Recovery Center really was probably saved my life during that time. So I found a therapist through there. I worked with her for probably about 6 months while those services were free. And then I worked with another therapist who is my mom's age, a woman that I grew up with. She was my young women's leader at one point. And And I always felt cared about by her. And so I did therapy with her for several years. And then, then moved and kind of got to a place where I thought, I'm good. And then the divorce happened and I moved back here and I have actually a male therapist now that has been very different and good for me. But no, it wasn't until 2013, that I finally sought out therapy. But therapy is amazing when you're willing to do the work. If you're taking the approach that you're going to go in and you're going to talk and a therapist is going to fix you, that's not it. It's really, really hard to feel what you feel and then to be able to express that to somebody else. And so, a big part of this journey is I'm somebody that needs to, my doctor, my hairdresser, my nail girl, whatever. If I don't feel like you care about me, I don't want to continue to pay you to do a service for me. And so the therapist that I have had, that is definitely a key thing, is that I've felt very seen. And because I was so invisible in my youth, that is something that is very comforting and healing to me now.
Are you sick of podcasts that just interview people with the same questions and gossiping nonsense?
Are you tired of hearing about what's wrong with the world? Can you locate your nearest orphanage?
Who cooked the Last Supper?
R.I.P. Mr. Potato Head.
Seppuku Harakiri.
Where is Mavis Beacon?
This is Hos.
And this is host Beefy.
Listen to the Beans and Rice podcast.
Exclusively in Braille and all streaming platforms.
Patent pending.
Are you tired of your work week? Boss breathing down your neck? You hate Mondays? Well, come on down, get your corporate voucher, and come down to orientation. November 14th, 7:30 to 11 p.m. at Unique Eek, 1435 South State Street. Come on down, there's going to be food, music, all the vibes, okay? Come unwind, dress business casual, and have a good time. All right, we'll see you there.
No pukesters helping me to the left, and no pukesters helping me to the right. Didn't need them then, don't need them now. You are the ex-champion, Mullen.
Now this is the way, Tony and David, that you do the figure four leg lock.
Do you love wrestling?
Do you believe that Stone Cold Steve Austin is the greatest entertainer of all time?
Or maybe that Shawn Michaels is the sexiest man alive?
Or did you have a thing for Sonny from the years of 1994 to 1996 like I did?
Did you know Yokozuna isn't even Japanese?
If you could count the number of dimples on Rikishi's ass, this podcast is for you.
Follow us, the Figure 4 Podcast on Instagram, at Figure4 Podcast. And check us out on YouTube.
Do it.
Tell your punk friends about us.
Yeah.
Listening to this, the small part of your story that I've heard, it almost feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost feels like so many systems have failed you.
Yes.
Whether if it was the system of the church and being told to just keep moving, or even the person that raped you being free, but you going to jail. I understand we accept our part in life, right? Yeah. You mentioned that you did some dirtbag stuff when you were young too, right?
Yeah.
But it almost feels like the system failed you. So many systems failed you. Do you feel like the systems failed you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that I feel like I am doing what I'm doing now, is because silence favors the predator. Silence favors the oppressor. And the more that we can share our stories, whether that is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, neglect, anybody, male, female, whoever you are. But the more of us that are able to share our stories, the harder it is to ignore the problems that are going on. And so I'm
release
super...
the Epstein files.
Release the Epstein files.
Sorry, I just got a Epstein file break. Release them. Sorry. I thought it was fitting.
No, it is. It is, and it's something that we shouldn't laugh about, but that we have to laugh about, because how are we here? But those women, oh my God, I know what it takes. I know what it takes. And I'm not somebody that is going up against the president of the United States or somebody that has more money than I could ever fathom. But I am somebody who has lost people in my life because I decided to speak. And I'm shaking right now because it's emotional and it's scary. Like, this is scary. But you know what it is more than it's scary? It's empowering. And I'm not, the people that hurt me don't get to break me. And this is my win. This is my revenge. You don't ever get to silence me again because now it's literally in writing. But I am to a place that if speaking my truth gets me killed one day, I'm okay with that. I hope it doesn't.
It's not gonna
I hope it doesn't. But I can accept that. And that is such a huge part of healing, is just finding our voice and being able to use our voice. And it's so important for those of us that can to do, because there's so many thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of survivors out there that are not to that place and might never be. And that's okay. That's okay, because it's not safe for everybody and it's not the right path for everybody.
It's the truth. I had somebody sitting in that chair, and when the lights went off and everything was off, they told me some similar stories, and they're like I'm almost to the point where I want to come out and tell people the true story, and really feel the healing part of it. And I think writing a book, doing an audio broadcast, regardless on your outlet, I think it's important for people to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah.
What part of the writing process was the most emotional writing whole, and which one brought you the most healing?
Oh, God. You are good at this. 2022 was really hard for me. I mentioned I was living in Texas. I was married. I thought that I was in a very good marriage. I thought I was married to my best friend, and that I was very protected. And so there was a safety that was there, right, with him, and I had all of my boys with me as well. And like I said, I was out of Utah, right? And so when I would get really frustrated or angry, I could say something if I needed to. But in the past, any time that I had confronted my dad or said something to sisters that didn't want to hear it or whatever it was, I would get the silent treatment, or there would be contention or whatever. And so I would pull away from the family for a time being. And then inevitably I would host a dinner or a party or something to bring us all back together, because what I wanted more than anything my whole life is my family. But starting this process in Texas allowed me the space of knowing that I wasn't missing out on anything because I was choosing to. I literally couldn't be there because of distance. And so much of this process and so much of the healing journey really, really was 2022. And something else that happened that year, which was huge and instrumental in this journey, was that I was able to share my story at work. And at the time I was working in tech. I just left tech. I just left a 9-year career to focus on this and to start a company of my own. But that was the last place that I ever would have thought that I would be sharing a very personal story, that included childhood sexual abuse or going to jail or the different things that I talked about. But I was given this opportunity and I took it. And that changed a lot and was very healing because, the prepping for that conversation. And I mentioned, locating court records and different things and asking questions and reading books and understanding trauma and all of these things that I did just to prep for that moment right there. And then once I shared my story, I actually took like a week and a half off of work and I sat at my laptop and I just wrote. I just wrote everything out. And so as healing as that was, it was also exhausting. I went to my doctor at one point and I got on anxiety meds and I said, this is going to kill me. And I knew, and I actually approached my parents at one point during this time too and said, I need help. Like, I need help. I wasn't going to stop, but I was genuinely worried about having a heart attack during this time. And
just from putting so much into what you're writing.
Yes, it is so emotional is not even the right word. It is so deep. You know, you are really digging into the root of everything. And when you start to do that, like I talked about, like reading my story back, every single time that I read it back, it unlocks something different. And so you have to think about, you know, in 2022, I was 41 years old. This is the majority of my life. That is years. And I'm looking at different situations, you know, different times in my life. And you're just like, whoa, you know, like you're putting an understanding, but with that understanding comes a lot of anger. And so, well, it was very, very healing. And it was during this time that I went to the Sapria retreat, thank God. There was also a lot of damage that was being done in the process, as well as I just unlocked things. And like the body keeps a score, literally, you know, it was doing so much physical damage. My back seized at one point during this time. I had like chronic diarrhea, migraines, like it just was all like I was just having visceral reactions to everything that I was processing. And so as I'm going through this, I'm like, no wonder people don't do it. Yeah. You know, like no wonder people don't do it. Like this is really hard. But I had gotten to the point where I knew that I was going to finish. I knew I was not, because it was already killing me anyway. So if it killed me in the process, okay. But I wasn't going to let all of this crap continue to have the hold that it had on me. I was going to find my way through. So, yeah.
Putting your life on paper, just writing in general, for me, it makes me realize certain things about myself. Was there anything surprising that you didn't know about yourself when you put it on paper that you're like, holy smokes, I didn't realize that?
I think, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And one of the biggest things was just that was the self-forgiveness, you know, as I'm writing and I'm reading and I'm going over those things. When I left my boy's dad in 2011, so from 2011 to 2015 is when I met my second ex-husband. It was not a good time in my life. It was not good to myself. I wasn't good to other people. And I was I never left my kids, but I was just an absent mom. And so I carried a ton of guilt for that. And on top of that, I have my oldest son, has a lot of health problems. He's a type 1 diabetic. He has a very rare bladder disorder that he was likely born with that didn't manifest until the diabetes kicked in. He's been hospitalized multiple times. He is considered disabled. And then on top of that, a couple of years ago, he was diagnosed bipolar. And so he's got the physical and he's got the mental health. And no matter what stage of healing I get to, nobody will ever convince me that that wasn't a byproduct of my trauma, you know, that was passed on to my son. And so I give myself as much grace as I possibly can, because I knew that from a very young age, I wanted to heal, you know, but it's a byproduct of the things that have happened. And now this is with a child that didn't deserve it and was completely innocent. But in writing and reading and in researching, that's really where the grace and the self-forgiveness came from, because I can either hate myself or I can choose to forgive myself. And I think that that's really where I realized the resilience and the resilience that I'm very proud of, you know, the resilience that I can take ownership for and say, you know, it's always been with me and it's been a protector throughout my life. But what I really needed was to be able to be resilient enough to get to the point where I could do the deep dive and the deep work and really do the healing so that I stopped hating myself.
If you were to give this book to younger you, let's say 15-year-old you, and she reads it, what do you think she's going to come back and say? What do you think her book report would read?
Oh, gosh. The very first dedication in this book is to me. It's to little me. It's to teenage me. It's to every version of me that I've ever been, because every version of me is so proud, you know, and I am the happiest, healthiest version of myself that I've ever been. And to go from being somebody who hates who you are and who feels hated by a lot of people into a woman who can look in a mirror and see physical beauty, can see inner beauty, can see strength, and can see just this like glow that I know that I carry now is so powerful, you know, and little me, I think especially 15-year-old Amber would just thank me. Thank me for knowing that like we made it, you know, and I needed every version of myself that I've ever been. And that's, you know, that's really where the forgiveness comes from is that I can now look back and say, angry me that robbed a taco joint, you know, me that got married when she didn't want to, all of these different versions of me, I needed to be those to protect me in the moment or the phase of, or whatever it was, to be able to get to here.
Why'd you rob the taco joint?
Yeah.
You can't just pass by
Oh,
that.
gosh.
Is that in the book?
It is. Let's just leave it at that.
You robbed a taco joint. Is this a taco truck or is this?
No, I mean, yeah, taco trucks. I'm not in Utah County. It didn't exist back then, but I had just turned 18, like a month after turning 18. And it was the place that I worked at. And my friends and I were sitting around one night and we're like, gosh, this place would be really easy to rob. There's no cameras, yet, you know, just kind of joking. And then all of a sudden we were like, oh, maybe we should rob it. And we did.
While you were on the clock?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we set, not that night, but we set up a whole plan. And
how'd you get caught?
We got caught because a customer, the cops did their work. You know, they did their job. Here I was thinking that we had completely outsmarted the police. But a customer had left a camera at the restaurant. And so that was back in the office. And so my friend who came in, I was the supervisor. I was a night shift supervisor. And so I was we had set it up. I'd send everybody home, right? He came in. This dumbass took the camera and he pawned it. So there were other things that had happened after this. That same friend and then other associates had started to rob other places, but they went back to the same place with a gun. And so it was just escalating. And I was like, no, this is way more than I ever, and I wasn't involved in those ones, but I was hearing about them. And so eventually I went to my dad and told my dad that originally I just told him my friend. You know, I didn't say anything about me, but I said, oh yeah, this guy, he's the one that did it. So my dad went to the police, and then my dad came back to me and said, well, they're pretty sure you're involved too. And I said, okay. So they gave me the option that they would either come arrest me. You know, they were getting really close to arresting him, which would probably lead to my arrest, or I could go turn myself in. And so I turned myself in, but that's another area where the police and the justice system failed me, because I was promised by detectives that if I just told the truth, that I was never going to, I wasn't going to go to jail, that I probably wouldn't even have a fine.
You grew up in Utah County. That's the number one thing they tell you. Hey, just give us this and we'll give you that.
Yes.
No, they will never give you that.
No. And I didn't, my dad, nobody said, oh, you should probably have a lawyer, don't plead guilty, because I went in and I pled guilty. Like, I did it, I had no idea. So I pled guilty. Come to find out, the detectives did not tell the judge anything, right? I was sentenced to 21 days in jail, work release, but still jail at 18 years old. My first offense.
Where would you do your work release? At the taco joint?
So, funny story. These people loved me. The owners were amazing people and did not want to fire me. But they were like, we kind of have to, because what kind of an example would it be? I'm like, yes, you have to fire me. I love you. Thank you. But,
Are they still around?
I don't think so. I don't. So,
well, probably not. You put them out of business.
No. Yeah. So the Taco Amigo in Orem used to be taco maker Jake's and Blumby's. That's, so for anybody that was around back then, that was me. But yeah, I worked at Subway, so met Donnie Osmond during my time while I was in jail, and his son worked with me at the Subway, and he was like, this is Amber, she's in jail.
Oh, damn. Donnie's like, damn. Like, okay, nice to meet you.
Yes. Yeah. So there's so much just humor in this story, and humor in the way of like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Just like, but that really does speak to the skills of justice, and how they just have never been in my favor. It's kind of crazy.
Were you scared when you got locked up? Like, what was your first impression? You find out you're gonna be doing 21 days.
Yeah.
You go into bookings. What was the experience going through that whole thing?
Oh, it was, that is traumatizing in and of itself. I think especially as a sexual assault survivor, which there's a high majority of women, that get imprisoned that are survivors, and men too. But you're strip searched. You are that. It's and of course I understand why, but just there's no such thing as dignity in jail at all. And the fortunate part for me throughout that whole process, it was work release. So if I was working, I was out. But B is that because it was work release, we were in a different area of the jail. So we weren't in the blocks. We were just, if you did anything, you got rolled up, and that meant that you took your little mat and they walked your ass to the blocks, right? So there was only 5 of us. And so it's not like I didn't have to shower with different people. And because we had to be on our best behaviors to be able to stay there, the threat of like violence, because when people found out why I was there, then they were like, oh, so you're a rat,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I turned a whole bunch of people in. And so I do remember there was one woman that was like, I'm going to get you, basically. And there was somebody else that was really protective of me, because I'm 18, almost 19 years old. I'm such a baby in there. So yeah, just a very interesting experience. And then one of the wardens, just really, I remember walking in and he was like, why are you here? So I just think even my personality, my presence, it didn't fit what they were used to seeing. And so there was kind of a protective stance that was kind of taken for me. And so it wasn't nearly as miserable as it could have been. And I only had to serve 18 days because I got 3 days good time. But
so you didn't get a girlfriend?
Oh, maybe that's where I went wrong.
Speaking of, you mentioned it. You had husband number 1.
Mm-hmm.
You had husband number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Going through this whole thing of from your early years to a marriage that didn't work out, did you love yourself after the first marriage?
No.
And going into the second marriage, did you love yourself during the second marriage?
I thought so. Of course, I've been angry. You know, I've been hurt. My second ex-husband I really thought was the love of my life and my best friend. But also, I wouldn't be here if I was still married. There were a lot of things in our marriage that, one of the things that I've realized, especially in relationships, is just because something is better than something else does not mean it's good enough. But for me, because I was actually in love with my second husband, where I was not with my boy's dad, you know, that was huge for me. And I just thought, so there were things that I put up with or accepted that maybe I wouldn't have, you know, otherwise. And so, yeah, I thought, you know, I remember thinking when I met him, like, oh, like we're two broke souls swimming in a fishbowl, and we've met and we're going to heal together. That's really what I thought. I thought that was why we met. And there were times where I thought that we were. But pretty early on, I saw that he was really resistant to any type of therapy, self-help books, you know, any of the things that I was trying to do. He wasn't very interested. And so I have a savior complex, you know, a rescuer, like I'm very codependent, not so much anymore. That's something that I've worked on a lot. Very anxious attachment style. And, you know, again, I didn't know these things because you can't fix what you don't understand. Yeah. And so, but looking back, I can say, oh yeah, like I went into both marriages and just tried to save my husbands, you know, like, oh, you don't like this, then, oh, you don't like this job? Oh, let's do something else. Or, you know, this is hard for you. Oh, let me fix it for you. And in my first marriage, realized very early on that you can't fix somebody else. But I didn't realize that I was still trying to do that, just in different ways. And I did that a lot in my second marriage, and I did it more because I loved this man. And so I really so desperately wanted him to find his healing and to find happiness, you know, in who he was. But no, I didn't really truly start to love myself until I started doing the research and I understood, you know, what trauma really was, how it imprinted all of those different types of things. And it's interesting because I actually think he needed to cheat on me for our marriage to end. That was a non-negotiable for me. But had he come to me and said, hey, I fell out of love with you, you know, I want a divorce, I think I would have fought really hard for our marriage. And I needed to do the rest of this by myself because I always try to save other people because I've always wanted somebody to come in and save me, you know, and especially men. Men hurt me. Men are the ones that hurt me. And so I've chased love in all the wrong places. And I've allowed myself to be in really, you know, I mean, different abusive relationships or just very manipulative, just toxic, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's what I knew. And so yeah, I can look back at it and say, no, I didn't. It wasn't until I said, oh gosh, okay. Amber, you can forgive yourself, you know, and that wasn't just an instantaneous thing at all. Even that has been a process because there's so many different things that are ingrained in us, indoctrinated. Like there was so much that I had to undo before I could start doing, you know, and all of that has been a process and happened at different times. But, you know, I was just thinking about this last night actually, and I feel like it's only been this year and it's only actually been in the last couple of months. I feel like the most healed version of myself. And the reason that I know that is because I have stopped seeking validation from men. That feels really freaking good.
Yeah. I'm usually, and I say usually in the small sample size that I know of the women friends that I have, where if they get burned or anything like that, it's like, I'm done with men. I'm done with it. I don't want to talk to a man. I ain't going on no dates. I ain't doing nothing. Have you felt that? Did you feel like you're done with the whole
I feel like
relationship?
you've read my book. Like, I can't, you're so amazing. You know, it would be completely understandable if I took the stance of, I hate men. Also, this is proof that sexuality is not a choice. But I have really good men in my life, and I'm raising 3 men, you know, and I no longer believe in God, but I got boys for a reason. And they are my greatest protectors at this point and have shown me what unconditional love is. But late last year, after just another horrendous dating experience, and part of the way that I cope when I'm single is I'm on dating apps immediately, you know, and so
Ew.
I know.
So I've never done the dating app
Good for
thing.
you.
So I'm so turned off on it.
Yes,
Like
you should be.
It doesn't seem good.
No.
Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
No. And actually that's how I met both husbands online, but I swore off dating apps. I have my 2025 bingo card, and on that is no dating apps. And I can sit here and tell you I have not been on a dating app this year at all. But I haven't closed myself off to dating. But I've, you know, so many different times in my life, people have said, you need to figure out how to be single, you know, be happy with yourself. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but I want love.
Yeah.
I want to be in love. I want to know what it feels like to be adored, and you know, like we all do, right? And so yeah, I mean, you know, that's how I coped with divorce.
How do you like going forward right now, right? Like, how do you trust? How do you get to a point where you do feel comfortable? Like, how do you get to that point?
So there's somebody in my life who I've actually been, like, we met on a dating app over 2 years ago at this point. And the first year was, you know, it was very casual. We would see each other every couple of months. We, you know, connected on social media. And so we'd have conversations every now and then, but it was never anything serious. And this man is a fabulous person. And I liked him. I've always liked him, but I never felt like the butterflies. I never felt the draw, right? And from the very beginning, you know, he had said that he wasn't like looking for a relationship. Well, I was, you know, at that time I still wanted that. And so I continued to date, and it was just one disaster after another. And it was like probably about this time last year where I saw this video on TikTok. This female creator said something to the effect of, "It's not love. You know, you're chasing the outcome. You're chasing the what if." And I saw that video, and it just set this light bulb off for me. And I was like, it's not love. It's I go after men that make me prove my worth, because that is what I have been doing my whole life. Is no, Dad, like, look at me. Like, I'm worthy of your love. I'm worthy of your protection, and not getting that from a very young age, definitely bled into, and it all does, right? So much of our like, we all have a childhood to recover from, regardless of how big or how little, you know, the impact was. But when I realized that, I just thought, screw that. You know, I don't want to do that anymore. And so that was when I was like, no more dating apps, because it's just toxic, and it was feeding my need to be validated, but I wasn't being validated in the way that, you know, in any way that was healthy. And so yeah, set that boundary for myself, set that goal. Didn't take dating off the table, but it was more organic, you know, but continued to still see this man. And earlier this year, as I started to write, he agreed to read my book. And then he agreed to leave me a review. And we have had hours and hours and hours of conversation about both of our lives. And, you know, I just started to realize, like, this is somebody who cares about me. Like, this is what care looks like. And I started to ask myself, well, then why don't you feel the same way, you know, that you have felt for these other guys? Like, this is a good guy. And that was another light bulb, like, oh my gosh, because he's safe, because he is good. And that is not what my nervous system is used to. You know, he has never asked me to chase him. I've never felt the desire to chase him. He's just been consistent. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to change that too. And that didn't mean that I was like, oh, you're going to start having feelings for him, but just all of these, you know, these changes, these acknowledgements, this understanding of why I do the things that I do, what my nervous system is set at. Back in 2022, when I was writing all of this, I went to my therapist at one point and said, what is going on with me? Because I was online gambling. So I was starting with self-destructive behaviors. And I said, like, what is going on? And she said to me, chaos is your norm. Like, chaos is your comfort zone. And I was like, no. But again, it's something that I had to have somebody tell me how to learn, how to be aware of, in order to then say, well, that's not what I want. I want to change that. And then you have to work to make those changes. Again, these are not things that are instantaneous at all. You have to be willing to continually do the work. You have to be willing to take ownership of these responses and behaviors, right? And say, okay, well, I'm not going to allow myself to continue to get into these toxic relationships. It's not healthy. It's not what I want. And start to shift. But as I started to heal that part of me, and this man just stayed very consistent, I started to fall in love, you know? And so yeah, for the first time in my life, I'm in love with somebody who loves the me that loves herself. And so...
Does he know that?
Yeah, he does.
So how's that going?
It's interesting, because this is not something that I've ever experienced in my life before, because we're not in a committed relationship. We haven't really even talked about that. But I think more me, because I'm not used to letting things flow. I have just let things flow, you know? So when we get time together, it's amazing and it's quality. And you know, I know if I really need something that he'll be there, and he knows the same from me too. But, yeah, he knows, he is a man of few words, but I feel it, you know, I feel it. And that is something too that I have really, this has just been so good for me, because I've had to sit back and really, challenge what, you know, my anxiety, my insecurities. Like, if he's not responding to a text message and I get super anxious, like, is this something that I really need to call him out on, or is it my insecurity, you know? And so whether he is a forever person in my life or he is temporary, I will forever be grateful, because he has just helped throughout this process, helped me to reset my nervous system. And, you know, at my book launch, it's happening in 2 weeks, absolutely crazy. One of the things that I am so excited about is the diverse group of people that are going to be there. Because when I started this journey, I really thought that it would be female survivors that would listen to me, or that would, you know, want to have the conversation. I feel like I can confidently say there will be as many men as there are women in that audience. And, you know, I know if I really need something that he'll be there. Because when I started this journey, I really thought that it would be female survivors that would listen to me, or that would, you know, want to have the conversation. I feel like I can confidently say there will be as many men as there are women in that audience. And, you know, I not only do I get to be in love with somebody, but I get to be in love with a lot of people, and that just looks so different for me anymore. I'm such a lover. You asked if you could hug me when I walk in, and I so appreciate that because I do the same thing. I'm such a hugger. Physical touch is my primary love language, but I always want to be respectful of people who might not be, but we're going to be doing a panel at the book launch, and my therapist, Doc, will be up there with me. One of the most incredible men that I know, and is somebody that has just turned into a friend. My old manager, David, who hired me into tech, is going to be there because we haven't touched very much on it, but sharing my story at work was pivotal. And I was making $9 an hour before I got into tech, and I broke the 6-figure mark within 5 years. And so building a career in tech, and David, who hired me I was supposed to be there for 3 months, turned into a 9-year career in tech. And David has been like a brother to me, somebody again who, started out in one role and has ended up as just one of my dearest friends. But there's just going to, and obviously my 3 boys.
They're going to be on the panel?
They won't be on the panel, but they're going to be introducing me and how I make it through this that's the part of it. That's the part that I'm nervous about, is because this is going to be the best night of my life, hands down, to have my 3 boys there, my mom, my sister Heather, this man that I'm in love with, and so many other people. I mean, this is the community that I have built. How I don't pass out is because I'm a fainter too. So I told Doc, I said, okay.
Hold on. When do you faint?
Oh my gosh. That's how my body reacts.
What?
Yeah.
What triggers your fainting?
Pain for sure. Like the only time I've ever needed stitches was because I cut my finger open and I passed out. When I came to, I was foaming from the mouth. I puked. Like my body is just funny. Like it's like, oh no, we're not going to deal with this.
I don't mean to
Good
laugh.
night. No,
this
it is
hilarious. You passed out from.
Yep.
You know what? Instantly, I just like your spirit animal is a goat. That's what the fainting goes.
Oh my gosh. Good night.
Don't throw Amber a surprise party. She might just.
I know. So, and it's funny because I just posted about this on Facebook, I think yesterday, but I was like, you guys, like, how am I going to get through? Oh, because my dreams this week have been like wicked vivid. And I had a dream about the book launch the other night, and it was like a cluster, right? And so I posted about that on Facebook, and so many people are like, you'll be fine. It's a room full of people that love you. I'm like, I know. Yeah. That's the problem. Like, of course it's going to be amazing, but I'm already an emotional person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I will cry. There's no shame in that. How am I going to get through all of this with all of you guys out there? And no matter who I look at, I can think of a moment where you embraced me, where you saw me, where you validated me, where I got to show up as me and not somebody who was or is trying to prove her worth anymore.
Yeah. If there's somebody out there that feels that they're in their hole, what advice would you give them?
Find your people. Find your people. We live in a society that is so family-centric, and that can be very damaging at times. Oh, they're blood. No, that's your mom. That's your dad. You can't say that about him or her. Yeah, you can. We do not. First of all, you can't heal in the environment that hurts you. Second, we don't owe anybody. Like I said, we don't owe anybody else forgiveness, but we don't owe, especially people that have harmed us, we don't owe them loyalty. We don't owe them care. We don't owe them concern. Now, can we be open to that? Absolutely. But this idea that you don't step outside of your family or you don't talk about things because it could affect your family is so damaging. And it wasn't until I said, okay, like I've got to look for other people. So same time frame, 2022, I took to social media. I created my TikTok. I created an Instagram that was really meant to share my story. And that's been ever evolving in what that looks like. But I went out and I built an online community. I have people that from TikTok that have bought my book. You know, I have a friend that I met through TikTok that I've actually met in real life as well, but he started telling me about a client of his. He's a personal trainer. And he started telling me about a female client of his. And he's like, you need to meet her. So he connected us, you know, and this woman was the first person to buy my book on Amazon, left me an amazing review. And we're like twin flames. It's crazy how much we have in common through TikTok.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the power of like social media, double-edged sword. Absolutely. But if you use it correctly, it can be so incredible. Because I was just telling my nieces, who obviously are, you know, growing up in the social media world, that when we were growing up, we didn't have that. So our environment, our community was our ward. It was our neighborhood. It was our school. It was like even our city, like Orem. Like if you didn't live in North Orem, I probably didn't know who you were, right? We were very isolated to location. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to have that anymore. You know, we can go out worldwide and we can find people who relate to us, whether that's through gaming or different experiences that we've had, trauma, politics, you know, whatever it is, hobbies. Like you can go find those people. I hate when I meet a fellow survivor, because I hate that anybody else has to experience that kind of pain. And there are way too many of us. But I always know. We find each other. And that part I'm very grateful for, because I felt and I was very alone as a child. You know, I was fortunately the only one that was abused. But that made for a very, very lonely experience. And Sapria was, you know, the Sapria retreat was instrumental for me, because it was the first time that I was with other survivors. In fact, 2 of my Sapria sisters are flying in from out of town to be at the launch. And all of them will be tuning in. You know, we've maintained, this was, 3 years ago now, maintained relationships and just this bond that is unbreakable.
How big is this group, Sapria, the retreat? How big is this
So
group?
our group was 8 people. I believe that the one here in Utah is up to 12. So it's still, you know, it's a relatively small group of women. And right now it is just for women. They are doing a lot of work for and with young men and men as well. So I'm super hopeful to see this extended to men one day as well. But right now it is for women 18 and older that were abused, 18 and younger. And it is a free resource. And so 10% of all book sales I am donating to Sapria. This is just an organization that does phenomenal things for people. When I started looking into resources, I was like, there's got to be something like, you know, rehab. So I started looking and I was like, $20,000, $30,000. Okay, well, I can't afford that. And it was through my TikTok, actually, that I had connected with a fellow ex-Mormon and a fellow survivor as well. And she told me about Sapria, you know, and to be able to, the only thing that I had to pay for was my travel there. But I spent 4 days in a very secluded, beautiful area of Georgia, in this mansion where they had a chef, actually a team of chefs, cook very healthy, delicious meals. Like we didn't have to take care of anything except for ourselves, you know? And it was, we all flew into the same airport. We all flew in around at the same time. And it was so awkward, you know, because we were all so anxious. And it was probably the first half a day was just not a lot of talking, you know. But as soon as we did all start to open up, it was just such a beautiful experience. I write about this in the book, but one of my girlfriends, we were in, it's not therapy because it's a support group, right? But we were in group and we were talking, and she said something about a trauma behavior. And I looked at her and I said, you mean I'm not alone? Like, this is something that I was like so embarrassed about and felt so much shame around. And the fact that she had opened up that conversation allowed me and then other women too to see, like, we're not weird. We're not like, this is normal. This is natural. And again, naming it allows you to then be able to work through it if that's what you want to do. And that's why we were there, but being with this group of women that we just knew, we knew, and we could wrap each other in love and comfort and understanding without having to explain was phenomenal. So,
did you do just the one trip?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you ever want to do another one?
So multiple retreats are not offered. They do have, they have like online support groups. There's tons of resources before and after, or if you're somebody that doesn't want to attend or isn't comfortable, they do a lot of that. But one of the other things that they do that's really cool is just like education and awareness, one of my favorite creators, Consciously on TikTok, always says, like, education is elevation, and the more that you know, the only way that we prevent this from happening is by talking about it. And it's hard. Like, I'm so grateful that you open these conversations and that other people like you open these conversations, because I am one person, but I will take any and every platform from this point forward that I can get to talk about this, because if you're listening, it's because you want to. And if you want to, you're going to learn something.
Oh, yeah. Even as a dad and as a father of a young girl, that's always something that's on my mind, where it's like, I hope she feels comfortable to tell me anything, and just know that, like, Dad's going to protect you.
Yeah.
And dads, I don't care. We're going to go to the fullest extent.
That's what dads are supposed to do.
Yeah, like, we're not going to have a Walt, knock on wood. I'm not going to let a Walt get away with anything.
Yeah.
And Dad will spend the rest of his life behind bars if he needs to. But a Walt is not going to get away with shit. Like, that's a promise to my daughter.
Yeah. That is why I know good men exist.
We're out here.
Yeah. Oh,
we're out here.
You guys are.
I think, as somebody that grew up with a single father, I had a great example of a father. And my dad, he taught me a lot unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
You just absorb good stuff, and you really don't know if you're doing a good job as a parent or a bad job as a parent until situations arrive.
Yeah. Yeah.
When my son goes to a friend's house, or my cousin or uncle house, and they come back and they're like, man, Tay was a great kid. Or when we're at the store and the mom said, the lady says, oh, thank you for holding the door open.
Yes.
It's like, it's like little moments like that.
Yep. I love that.
And when you get reports from school saying that your son is a joy to have at school, and that we wish we can copy this kid, like, that's where you know that you're getting these wins as a parent.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yes.
Speaking of family, though, how is your family taking this book coming out? Because there's a lot to it, right?
Yeah.
The whole time you're telling me all of this stuff, obviously mom's cool about talking about this stuff. You talk about your nieces. How does the family feel about this book coming out?
So one of the coolest things that happened, this was, I don't know, a week or so ago, was my son, Caleb, 20-year-old. I said, hey, Kay, you got a package, And so I gave it to him, and he opens it, and he pulled out my book. And I just started crying, and then he hands it to me and he said, will you sign this for me? And so then I just started crying even more, It is either that or it is the exact opposite. And so my boys are so proud of me. My mom is so proud of me, she's on her own journey and it looks different for her, and that's okay. My sister Heather has been my best friend so forever, and has always been supportive, and my brother has been able to be more supportive as of late than in the past. But I think luckily I don't have family members that are reaching out to me trying to dissuade me. But there's a lot of people that I'm not talking to,
Gotcha.
and that's one of the things that my therapist has worked with me on is like, let's prep for what this might look like when questions about your dad do come up, or what happens if your dad shows up at the lunch. No, he's not going to do that, and he's not. But yeah, like and it's hard. Like even last night, I had a conversation with my sister Heather, and we were talking about family a little bit, and there were just some things that hurt, and ended up having a dream last night that I feel like was really symbolic. And she texted this morning, and I said, well, I had this dream. And she said, oh, I shouldn't have said anything. And I said, yes, you should. Like, this is part of the process. I don't need to be shielded from the hurt. Like, the hurt is already there. So I think that is when you know that you have healed the most broken parts of yourself, is when you can handle the things that are coming, or that, because yeah, like not having my entire family is always going to break my heart. But I have finally gotten to a place where I can close the door on relationships that need to be, well, knowing that there's like, my door is always open, but it requires accountability. And that is not just a sorry. It requires accountability, and it requires an effort to change and be better. And that is constant, so.
You mentioned that you were in the tech industry for, I think you said 9 years. Yeah. Did you recently get out of tech?
Yeah.
How was 9 years being a woman in the tech industry?
Yeah, it was crazy. So I'm not technical. I started out in customer service, and as a customer service rep, and I was able to work my way up through sales. And my last position, I was a services engagement manager, which meant that I specialized in our professional services offerings. So I sold a lot of consulting, or I helped to sell a lot of consulting engagements. But being a woman in tech is very interesting because it's a very male-dominated field. And I had severe imposter syndrome. I don't have a college degree. Like I said, like I went in, I was hired to be there for 3 months, but I saw an opportunity and thought, okay, if I work hard, yada, yada, yada. And that turned into a 9-year career in tech. Sorry, my nose is running from all this crying, but tech changed my life, and once I got in, I never saw myself leaving. But through the experiences of sharing my story and then writing the book, through sharing my story, actually, I had a lot of colleagues come to me and open up, during my conversation, my friend April that hosted the conversation, she said something at the very end that has always stuck with me. And she said, vulnerability begets vulnerability. And holy cow, that played out in real time for me as people started to just open up. And it is the most humbling, incredible thing when people come to you and trust you with hard things, especially with things that are very, very vulnerable. And through this, I saw an opportunity and seized it to create an initiative called Share Your Story, where I then hosted conversations with other colleagues, and we just talked about hard shit. One of my first conversations was a friend of mine that has also been abused as a child, and lots of trauma following that. I had different cancer survivors. We've talked about, divorce and co-parenting. We have talked about war, just hard things that you're not supposed to talk about at work.
Yeah.
But that was really like the coolest thing that happened for me and to me through tech, you know, and yeah, it led to me writing and sharing and eventually leaving.
So why are you leaving, or why did you leave, and what's the endeavor that you're working on now?
Yeah, so I am launching my own company. It's called Whole Heals, and it's really about helping to heal the workplace. And I'm doing that by developing training that is specific to trauma and neurodivergence. So the trauma piece is to help people be better trauma informed. And this really comes from a very specific experience that I had several years ago, but then just through other experiences that I've had, you know, throughout my career, different jobs, whatever it may be, where I had a colleague that got me on a phone call, made a bunch of accusations, and there's plenty of context to that. But during this phone call, you know, I really felt like he was trying to get me fired. And so as he started to get more aggressive, and luckily for me, he recorded the whole thing. But as he started to get more aggressive, I said, I'm not going to be part of this. And I hung up. And as soon as I hung up, I called my manager and I was just hysterical. This was my very first year in a new company. And, you know, plenty of imposter syndrome. And here I feel like a senior consultant is trying to get me fired from my job. And, you know, so I tell him, I say, I think that this person is trying to get me fired. And his response was, oh, I don't think that that's what's happening. And that triggered the shit out of me, because my whole life I have been treated like I am dramatic. I have been gaslit to believe that, you know, that I'm crazy, that the way that I feel about certain situations isn't actually what's happening. And whether or not this man was trying to get me fired, and I still think that that's the truth, that is how I felt in the moment. And my manager is somebody that knew my story and I know cares about me. And so that was really hard for me. And as I sat back and I started to think about it, what I realized was he just doesn't know. He doesn't understand that those words just re-traumatized me, you know, and why they re-traumatized me. We all have some sort of trauma, all of us. Either we've already experienced something or we will. None of us is exempt. But a lot of us define trauma as like what the psychology world would define as like the big T traumas. So yeah, like abuse, natural disasters, war, you know, these very major things that anybody would look at and be like, well, yeah, duh, you know. But trauma is also can be very like maybe micro, but like, I mean, workplace bullying, you know. So when you think about a workplace, there's a lot of trauma that happens in the workplace even. And so I just have this philosophy that if we can heal the workplace, we can heal the home, because we spend so much time at work and all of that trickles down. And if I have CEOs that will give me the opportunity to come in and train people and give them at minimum a baseline understanding of what trauma is, what trauma responses and behaviors look like, and the language that we can use as people leaders, HR, you know, colleagues to just be mindful and aware. Because to me, it's no different than why we now have mandated, you know, sexual harassment training, workplace bullying training, why we don't say certain words, why we are asked to use pronouns. People, if you don't understand, then you're very liable to, you know, be guilty of causing harm to somebody else through your words. But be like, again, we don't know what we don't know, you know? And like, for me, somebody who experienced like crazy levels of trauma, ongoing trauma throughout my life, it wasn't until I took it upon myself to educate myself and to learn about trauma that I could make changes. And so I would love the opportunity to be able to go into different corporations and be able to train people in, again, what trauma is, how it shows up in the workplace, what we can do to prevent it. And I mean, you have two types of people, right? You have, especially in the workplace, you have CEOs that are very money driven. They only care about money. And then you have CEOs that are very people centered. And we've seen some of these incredible stories that have come out about people that have started companies that are more human focused, and that when we provide a very safe, healthy workplace, that leads to money. Mm-hmm. And so even if I'm dealing with somebody who might not care about the trauma side of things from a human perspective, you'll care about it from a financial perspective, and the less trauma that happens in a workplace, the less re-traumatization because of different life experience that happens in a workplace, the more loyalty, the more productivity, the more money, the less, insurance, sick days, all of that. So, I believe that we can have a huge impact. And in industries that don't typically see or talk about being trauma informed. And the neurodivergent piece comes into it because I think that there's still a big misunderstanding about what neurodivergence is, how it shows up in different people, how it shows up in the workplace. And because my oldest son is neurodivergent, and so I've seen how difficult it has been for him to navigate the corporate world.
The book is out right now on Amazon. You can go get it. We got the book launch October 10th.
Yeah.
What's the location?
That is at the Sapria building in Lehigh. It is sold out. So I'm so excited. But yeah, look for me. I mean, I'm making my rounds as much as I said. Like I said, give me a platform, I will take it.
Why not create your own?
I've thought about that. Yeah, there's so many different ways and areas that this can go. And one of the things that I'm not great at is follow through. And so I'm trying to, that was my goal this year, right? Write this book, finish it. Before you do anything else, finish it. And once I got to a point where I was like, okay, the book is written, it's going to get published. I want to do speaking engagements. I want to do whatever. And then, this idea for this company had actually come to me last year. And so anyway, once I finished the book, I was like, okay, what's next? Well, this is what's next. But I want to be very careful about anything that I'm creating. I'm doing it correctly and I'm giving it the space to grow. So yeah, a podcast might be in my future.
What about audio? Will we get this in audio version?
Great question. That's something that I'm working on right now. We have a mutual friend, Proof. He's helping me find somebody to do some recording. But yes, the full intention is to get this on Audible.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
To meet the people where they're at, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's a huge opportunity. I think you're doing a phenomenal job. Who did the art?
Oh, my girlfriend, Giselle Chastain. Yes. So somebody that I grew up with. One of the things that I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to utilize people in my life, right? People that I know. So yes, she did an amazing job. Her name is in here, but yeah, she really captured what I was looking for.
What should we expect October 10th?
Oh, a lot of tears. Hopefully I don't pass out. But really, it's a celebration, right? And I will be live streaming on my TikTok. So if you have any interest in following me, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram under The Listening Lamb. But I'm going to live stream on TikTok and possibly some other platforms as well. But I mean, tune in. Not only does the support help further heal me and validate me, again, we lessen the instances of childhood sexual abuse when we talk about them.
The readers, if you want the readers to take one lesson out of this book, what would you want them to take away from it?
That healing is possible. You have to want it though. And I will never tell anybody that it is easy because it is not. But we get one life, and you can either let life break you or you can let life make you. And like I said, the people that tried to break me don't get a win.
They don't. And now you're whole.
I am.
That's awesome. One more time, the social media, where people find you, And obviously they can't get tickets now, so they're not.
Yeah.
You gotta look, but they can stream it, right? They can join via the stream.
Yeah.
What's all that information one more time?
So it's The Listening Lamb, LAMB. And that's on TikTok and Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Amber Washington. I'm not going to accept every friend request. I try to keep that more to my people, but also recognizing that I need to branch out and be a little bit more available as well. So
is Washington maiden, first or second marriage?
Second. Second. And well, I don't know if I should say this, but my boy's last name is Knabenschue, so I went from Lay is my maiden name, to Knabenschue. To Washington, and somebody said, well, aren't you going to change it? And I was like, to what? No, Washington is a lot easier. And do you know how hard it is to change your name? I'm good.
I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
How hard is it to get divorced twice? Sounds like a lot of paperwork.
It is. Yeah.
Any plans on moving out of Utah County?
Oh, that's such a good question too. I had every intent of getting the hell out of here again, but I like it.
Okay.
I might buy a house here. We'll see.
Here, Utah County, or
I would prefer Salt Lake, but yeah, you might find me in Utah for longer than I thought I would be here.
I keep on thinking of questions. I know we're over an hour and a half. I want to wrap this up. Might have to release this in 2 parts. But the retreat was so beneficial to you, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever see yourself creating the next thing that might benefit a person like you where you are right now?
Yeah, all the time. When I first started thinking about this company, I actually wanted to do a nonprofit. And a big part of that is that I wanted to give people, and this is something that I would like to do eventually, but I would love to give people a way to share their story. And to create different modalities to do that, right? Or not create them, but explore different modalities, because I am very vocal. I can vocalize, I can write, I can tell you my story, but that's not everybody. So we have to tell our story. We have to get it out of us. The body keeps the score. If you do not talk about it, it will fester, it will hurt you. And it can even kill you. So get it out. But what does that look like? Art, different art therapy, music, just different forms of creativity to help you tell your story. And so what I would love to do is have different classes or courses, or an offering where, and in fact, I've already created it, but like a 12-week program where the first week we do, theater, we're going to act it out. And then the second week we're going to do pottery, or just different things. And you're going to tell your story in all of these different creative ways of expression, and then find what really, really speaks to you. But the goal is to help people get it out. So hosting Share Your Story was such a cool opportunity for me because I knew that I was helping people tell their story. So I knew that I was helping people heal. And if that is the legacy that I can leave, man, that's pretty freaking awesome.
Is that company still doing that?
Yes. In fact, my sister, Heather, is taking over for me. So I have 2 siblings that work for the same company. Susa is the company. They're in the book. They've said I can mention them. But my sister is still employed there. And so she actually is getting ready to share her story in a couple of weeks. And then she will host that. So yeah, they are.
The legal side of this book, was it hard to get this thing? I don't know one thing about publishing a book, but I'm assuming you're talking about your story that has other people involved in your story. Was that hard to get that approved in this book, or is there
no
red tape with that?
No. So I had a girlfriend of mine that's a lawyer. She's not a literary lawyer, but she read the book and she said, look, Amber, at the end of the day, anybody can sue you. But the defense to defamation is truth. So first of all, I changed most names in the book. And anything that I talk about where, there's anything legal, I either have police reports for court. I have receipts. Yeah. At the end of the day, I have receipts. And not only that, I really tried to have this be my story, not to go off and make it about other people. In fact, there was one point where I had written a lot about what dating has been like for me the past 2 years and like mentioned, different people here or there. And then I thought, no, I don't know. I actually don't want to give them space. Like I can talk to what my experience has been without naming people. And so that's something that I really tried hard to do. So yeah, there's been a fear that there are some people that could come, that could come after me. But again, that's the other side of like owning my story. That was really important to me because you can't use it against me. I've already said, you can't come in and say, well, do you know that she robbed a taco joint? Yeah, she talked about that,
Which, by the way, side note, I'm literally upset that tacos, what was it called?
It was Taco Maker, Blimpies and Jake's.
I'm upset that the owner of that place isn't on the panel. You got the panel, your last job.
That's so cool.
Now we need the guy to come back.
Man, I'm gonna have to see if I can track them down. Yeah.
But no, I that's why I was interested to see if there is, that legal side of things, because I'm sure there's people out there. You mentioned it. It's your life, and timelines are hard to figure out, right? I'm sure there's somebody mentioned in this book that might be like, that's not how I remember it.
Yeah,
right?
and you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. And I even say, like in the very beginning, there's a little legal disclaimer. This is my story. This is to my best recollection, to my best research, to everything. And I stand by my truth. So if you have a different version of me and you feel like you need to tell that story, okay. A lot of it has been said and I've been quiet for a long time. Or not said as much as I might say in the book. But even, it's interesting because when my mom finished the book, she called me and she said, you left a lot out.
That was my next question is, I know you want this to linger and you want it to live, but is there going to be a part 2 or another book? Because I'm sure, I'm just looking at it, that's not enough pages to get everything out. Right?
No.
So I'm sure that there's more that you want to say, or maybe whole nother subject that you want to do.
So I do. Like the next book that I'm going to write is going to be when this company succeeds. Because can you even imagine going from somebody that I was homeless at one point, not very long, but I was, right? This is down and out. Homeless. All of my belongings were reduced to a couple of totes in a car that my mom sold me for $1. Okay. I was making $9 an hour working at Winco Foods before I got into tech. So no college degree, broke. Now I've been through 2 divorces that I did not financially benefit from in either one, right? I built me. You want to talk about self-made? This girl is self-made. So to be able to write this next book when I can say for a long time, I felt very guilty and weird when it came to money. Like I shouldn't profit off of telling my story. I'm generous to a fault. And honestly, that's a trauma response because I give and give and give because I don't feel like I'm worthy of the money. That's changed. But when I started researching, I pulled up a couple of different reports that said that the financial impact of childhood sexual abuse over a victim's lifetime can exceed $300,000. And when I read that, I was like, geez. So not only have I carried the emotional and the physical impact of abuse, I have also carried the financial impact of it because I've paid for my therapy. I've, 2 divorces, like my health. I have paid for all of that. And so part of this healing journey and getting to a place of, again, healing the most, you're never healed, okay? Life is always happening, but we can absolutely heal the most broken parts of us. And a big part of that for me was realizing that I have financial worth as well, but that my revenge is the story, right? It's not trying to go out and hurt other people or sue people. I have filed a suit. You'll read about that in the book. But it's this is my way of paying for something that I never should have had to pay for as well. So I have a goal. Like my book is listed at $25. That's a lot for a book. Right now, I'm not going to drop that price because I would like to sell, I believe it's 12,000 copies, you know, is $300,000. And that's, I mean, shipping and like whatever. But I want this book. I want this story to pay for the pain and the damage that it has caused. That is the best thing that I can actually do for myself, is to make the money, to put the story out there, to own my own story, and to not be shut up, and to not feel guilty about that.
As you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Again, Whole is out right now. It is a memoir from Amber Washington. I'm looking forward to reading the book.
Yeah.
Not only that, but to see what you do next and to see how this company goes and to follow your journey, because and it's been a wild one.
Yeah.
So, one more time, social media. Where can we find you?
Yeah. So TikTok and Instagram is at The Listening Lamb, and all of those, you know, Amber Washington as well. So. Awesome. And you can find me on podcasts. You can find me out on the dance floor downtown on the weekend with girlfriends. You'll find me everywhere because I'm a bit of a social butterfly. But
that's good. Keep on keeping.
You'll find me at Scores tonight.
Oh yes,
hanging out with you guys.
Yes, this will come out afterwards. But it was a phenomenal evening.
It was the best.
Here's the thing about Lehigh. I was just talking about this. Lehigh, at least Scores, which is a sports bar in Lehigh. DJing throughout Salt Lake City, DJing around the whole state, Ogden. Lehigh comes out to have fun. I've noticed. There's not I'm going to just stand here and look cool. Mm-hmm. Like what I've noticed is that it's 4 girls to 1 guy. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of women. And they come out to have a good time. So I'm looking forward to tonight.
Well, I'm excited because I'm like, we're going out. We are not staying in Utah County, you know? So, and I mean, I'm coming for you guys, of course, but I love hearing that. So I'm going to make sure that I experience that as well.
Hell yeah. All right. If you can follow me at Drerawka, DRERAWKA. And as you know, the Patreon is up. You can go on to patreon.com/Drerawka. You can also, it's hoodie season. It's cold here in Utah now.
Heck yeah.
You can go on to allrock.com, ALLRAWK.com, and get a hoodie, get a t-shirt. It's weather, so go get one. And if you don't want to do that, you just want to, you know, not support monetarily, you just want to show some love, like, share, comment, subscribe, get this story out there, tell the people about this show. Obviously, go get Miss Washington's book and learn more about that. Have the day you deserve. Always protect your light. We're out. Peace.